This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. When there is an ending, there was a beginning. Every victim has a picture to paint. Every true crime has its time and place. Please join our Mja Podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Welcome to our Mja Podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Episode 16, Part 8, 12 Missing Person Cold Cases. The NCIC statistics for missing people number over 600,000 a year. There are many missing children and adults that are quickly found alive and well. However, tens of thousands of individuals remain missing. On this podcast, we will profile 12 such cold cases. They have vanished without a trace. One minute they are there, and the next moment they are gone. It's a family's worst nightmare is when they have a loved one who vanishes without a trace. In the United States, missing persons have become an epidemic, a widespread occurrence in a community at a certain time with no end in sight or any type of relief. There are many cases that become folklore in their area because the case remains unsolved after several years. Law enforcement, volunteer groups, and advocates are overwhelmed with the numbers of missing people. A lot of people ask, how old does an unsolved case have to be before it's considered a cold case? The truth is, it depends on who you are asking. A cold case is defined as an unsolved criminal investigation such as a homicide or abduction or a missing person that has stopped being actively pursued due to lack of evidence or leads to follow. Some of these cases don't have much info to follow concerning the case. But these types of cases have to be profiled because sometimes it just takes one person that hears the circumstances of a case and realize that they actually have info about the case. As a nation, we have to do a better job of solving these missing person cold cases. Good evening. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Joining me later will be our co-host, Olivia. Olivia and I will profile 12 missing person cold cases. We are coming to you from Morrisonville, New York, located in the Adirondack Mountains. Missing person cold cases. Case 1. On December 19, 1988 is when 25-year-old Kevin Rainey, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Millington, Tennessee. Case 2. On August 15, 1996 is when 33-year-old Janet Gail Levine March, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Forest Hills, Tennessee. Case 3. On April 11, 1998 is when 20-year-old Jason Andrew Knapp, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Clemson, South Carolina. Case 4. On April 24, 1993 is when 29-year-old Andrea Lynn Hazlett, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Case 5. On January 7, 1993 is when 34-year-old David Lee Branton, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Case 6. On October 7, 1988 is when 54-year-old Ada Jane Grooms, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Scottsdale, Pennsylvania. Case 7. On October 2nd, 1998 is when 36-year-old Robert Michael Bobo A white male went missing and vanished without a trace from Prospect, Oregon. Case 8. On July 4th, 1982 is when 18-year-old Sherry Melissa Irely, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Salem, Oregon. Case 9. On December 13th, 2004 is when 26-year-old Stephen Mitchell Adams, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Case 10. On April 13th, 1986 is when 19-year-old Pamela Dawn Tinsley, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Case 11. On October 3rd, 1982 is when 42-year-old James Edward Lewis, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Case 12. On July 31st, 1975 is when 21-year-old Denise Newsom Porch, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia will be on the line. Olivia and I will profile 12 missing person cold cases. Be back in a moment.
You are not real. The reality of an observable entity designated by the term everyday life stands a good chance of remaining hypothetical for many people. You are not real. Indeed, the most striking feature of the present group for research on everyday life is obviously not the fact that it has not yet discovered anything. You are not, but the fact that the very existence of everyday life has been disputed from its very inception. And increasingly so with each new session of this conference. You are not real. Most of the talks we have heard so far have been by people who are not at all convinced that everyday life exists. You are not real. Since they haven't encountered it anywhere. You are not real. A group for research on everyday life with this attitude is comparable in every way to an expedition in search of the Yeti. You are not real. You are not real, which might similarly come to the conclusion that its core was merely a popular hoax.
Welcome to our Mja Podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Episode 16, Part 8, 12 Missing Person Cold Cases. We have Olivia on the line. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good.
And are you ready to dig into these unsolved cold cases?
Yes.
Welcome to Tennessee. The Doe Network has 32 males and 55 females listed as being missing from the state of Tennessee. Case 1. Welcome to Millington, Tennessee. Missing male. It was on December 19th, 1988 is when 25-year-old Kevin Rainey, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Millington, Tennessee. On that date is when the 25-year-old Rainey, a Marine corporal from Yuma, Arizona, was last seen. The 25-year-old Rainey was training at a Navy base in Millington, Tennessee. While Rainey was training at the naval base in Millington, he fell in love with a dancer at the Brass Rail, a popular strip club. He went to the dancer's trailer park to pick her up. But instead, Rainey met the dancer's boyfriend. The boyfriend asked Rainey to come inside the trailer, and that was the last time he was ever seen or heard from again. Several days later, the 25-year-old victim, Kevin Rainey's car, was found in a Walmart parking lot behind the trailer park. Bloodstains were found inside the vehicle, but DNA testing was not available the year the crime happened. But it was the same blood type as Kevin Rainey. Investigators later learned that the dancer's boyfriend had Rainey's personal belongings, things like Rainey's boots, a watch, and his scuba gear. The boyfriend then allegedly started giving gifts to the dancer that 25-year-old Kevin Rainey had bought for her. Missing Kevin Rainey is still listed as a deserter, but investigators are certain Rainey was murdered by the dancer's boyfriend. In 1988, the Attorney General's office said they would not prosecute without a body. In 2005, investigators reopened the case. The Attorney General's office was ready to prosecute and were closing in on their main suspect when he suddenly died. That's just a screw-up that the suspect didn't pay for his crime of murder. Life can be a bitch. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 25-year-old Kevin Rainey from Millington, Tennessee. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Naval Criminal Investigation Service, NCIS, Special Agent Otis Campbell at 901-874-5387.
Case 2. Welcome to Forest Hills, Tennessee. Missing female. It was on August 15th, 1996, when 33-year-old Janet Gail Levine Mach, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Forest Hills, Tennessee. On that date, the 33-year-old Mach was last seen by her husband, Perry Mach, at their home in Forest Hills, Tennessee. According to the husband, attorney Perry Mach and his wife Janet packed some bags and walked out the door and drove off, claiming that his wife Janet did not say where she was going. A week into the investigation, the police found Janet Mach's car parked in the lot of an apartment complex at 2 miles from the Mach house. They found some of Mach's personal effects, including a passport. Prime suspect in the disappearance of 33-year-old Janet Mach is her husband, Perry Mach. Perry Mach refused police requests to interview him or his children. Perry Mach also refused to allow his house to be searched. Police got a search warrant. Police searched the house as well as nearby woods, 2 lakes, and a river. They didn't find the body of 33-year-old Janet Mach and located no evidence that a crime had been committed. In August 2005, Perry Mach was arrested in Mexico in connection with Janet's disappearance. In August 2006, Perry Mach's trial on second-degree murder charges began. On August 17, 2006, Perry Mach was found guilty on all 3 charges against him: second-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. Perry Mach was sentenced to 25 years for second-degree murder, another 26 years on a charge of conspiring to kill his in-laws, another 2 years for the abuse of a corpse, another 5 years for tampering with the evidence. To add icing on the cake, another 5 years was added on for stealing from his former law firm. 33-year-old Janet Mach has never been found. Foul play is suspected in her disappearance from Forest Hills, Tennessee. If you have any info concerning this case, please call Nashville Police Department at Cold Case Investigations Unit at 615-862-7511.
Welcome to South Carolina. The Doe Network has 38 males and 41 females listed as being missing from the state of South Carolina. Case 3. Welcome to Clemson, South Carolina. Missing male. It was on April 11th, 1998 is when 20-year-old Jason Andrew Knapp, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Clemson, South Carolina. The 20-year-old Knapp was last seen at his apartment on Calhoun Street in Clemson, South Carolina. About 30 miles from Knapp's apartment, his vehicle, a white 1990 Chevrolet Beretta with Pennsylvania plates, was found at the Table Rock State Park in Pickens, South Carolina. Receipts found in his locked car at the state park showed that the 20-year-old Knapp went to Wendy's, then stopped at a Ingles store for a 6-pack of soda and a container of fruit juice on that Easter Sunday in 1998. $50 in change was found on the console of Knapp's car. Knapp's fingerprints were on a park admission ticket that he arrived between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Despite an extensive search of the park area, 20-year-old Jason Knapp has not been located. The day before Knapp disappeared, him and a friend had been looking for an apartment. The night on April 11, 1998, Knapp was at his apartment watching a movie. That's the last time Knapp's roommate saw him. Knapp's personal rifle and some ammunition were found untouched in the closet of his bedroom. There is no evidence that he planned personal harm to himself. There is no evidence that the 20-year-old Knapp had planned to run away. According to an ATM receipt, Knapp had withdrawn only $20 from his bank account the day before his disappearance. Knapp's checkbook was found in his apartment and contained a considerable amount of money which has been untouched. Knapp's suitcase and all of his clothes and other personal belongings were still in the apartment. Foul play is suspected in 20-year-old Jason Andrew Knapp's disappearance from Clemson, South Carolina. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Pickens County Sheriff's Office at 864-898-5500.
Case 4. Welcome to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Missing female. It was on April 24th, 1993, when 29-year-old Andrea Lynn Hazlett, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was on that day that 29-year-old Hazlett was last seen at her apartment in Deer Track Villas near Surfside Beach. Andrea Lynn Hazlett lived with her husband, Larry Hazlett, and their 2 children. At the time of her disappearance, Andrea Hazlett's parents had taken their 5-year-old son to Disney World. When they returned their grandson to his home, Hazlett's husband and daughter were home, but the 29-year-old Hazlett was not. Larry Hazlett said he hadn't seen his wife, Andrea, in 4 days. 29-year-old Andrea Hazlett's van was parked in front of their apartment. Hazlett's purse and pocketbook and suitcase and her toothbrush were discovered missing from inside the apartment, but none of Hazlett's clothing was missing. And Andrea Hazlett's nearly 3-year-old daughter was asked about her mother. She said, "Daddy hurt Mommy, and Daddy put Mommy in the bushes." In 1996, Larry Hazlett was charged with his wife's murder, but the charges were later dropped from lack of evidence. Foul play suspected in the 29-year-old Andrea Hazlett's disappearance from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Horry County Police Department, Detective Ken Marcus, at 843-915-5350.
Welcome to Pennsylvania. The Doe Network has 74 males and 98 females listed as being missing from the state of Pennsylvania. Case 5. Welcome to Allentown, Pennsylvania. Missing male. It was on January 7th, 1993, is when 34-year-old David Lee Branton, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Allentown, Pennsylvania. On that day, at around 11 a.m., the 34-year-old Branton was last seen leaving the Allentown Racket Club in Allentown, Pennsylvania. When David Lee Branton's roommate returned to their apartment on North 16th Street in Allentown, Pennsylvania that evening, the roommate noticed that Branton's car was parked across the street instead of in its usual place behind the apartment. There was no sign of 34-year-old David Branton, but yet none of his clothes or his medication was missing. When Branton failed to return after a few days, his roommate called police. The 34-year-old Branton has a history of substance abuse and had left the area before, so it wasn't new. But Branton had always contacted friends or relatives to let them know he was all right. Since January 7, 1993, no one has reported being contacted by the 34-year-old Branton. Police searched Branton's car and home and found no evidence regarding his disappearance. David Lee Branton is an attorney with a law office. There are copies of numbers of newspaper articles from the Allentown Morning Call pertaining to Branton's disappearance at his Find a Grave memorial site. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of an attorney, 34-year-old David Branton from Allentown, Pennsylvania. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Allentown Police Department Detective Christopher McCarty at 610-437-7741.
Case 6. Welcome to Scottsdale, Pennsylvania. Missing female. It was on October 7th, 1988, when 54-year-old Ada Jane Grooms, is it Grooms? Mark?
Yes, yeah, Grooms.
Mark.
Yeah,
Grooms.
Grooms, yes.
Oh, a white female disappeared and vanished without a trace from Scottsdale, Pennsylvania. On the morning when the 54-year-old Grooms was last seen, she drove to work at Grooms Transit Company. This was a company Grooms co-owned and operated with her estranged husband. The 54-year-old Grooms had been separated from him for more than 2 years after 34 years of marriage. Grooms had claimed her husband was physically abusive. Grooms had obtained protection from abuse orders from her husband in both Pennsylvania and Maryland. On October 7th, 1988, between 11 a.m. and noon, her husband reported lost seeing his wife. Did I miss a part?
Yeah, on October 7th, 1988.
After arriving at work, Ada Jane Grooms asked to have her vehicle inspected by one of the mechanics. According to an unidentified witness, there was some type of an argument over the inspection at 10:30 a.m. that morning. However, the vehicle was inspected and driven away and found parked on a side street near Grooms' home. The 54-year-old Grooms was never seen again or heard from again. It was on October 7th, 1988, between 11 a.m. and noon, her husband reported last seeing his wife. The 30-foot-long motorhome, which was owned by the couple, was discovered missing around the same time Mrs. Grooms disappeared. The husband told police that he believed his wife had driven the motorhome west and joined a cult. In 1989, the vehicle was recovered in Tampa, Florida, but there were no signs of 54-year-old Ada Grooms. Grooms was declared legally dead in October 1996. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 54-year-old Ada Grooms from Scottsdale, Pennsylvania. If you have any info concerning this case, please call Pennsylvania State Police, Troop A, Trooper Brian Zimmerman, Greensburg CIA Unit at 724-832-3288.
Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia and I will profile 6 more missing person cold cases. Be back in a moment. Welcome back to our Mja Podcast, the series Deep into the Woods. Episode 16, Part 8, 12 Missing Person Cold Cases. Welcome to Oregon. The Doe Network has 55 males and 54 females listed as being missing from the state of Oregon. Case 7. Welcome to Prospect, Oregon. Missing male. It was on October 2nd, 1998, is when 36-year-old Robert Michael Bobo, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Prospect, Oregon. On that date, around 10 p.m., two hunters stated that a female dropped Robert Bobo off at his campsite in a remote wooded location in Woodruff Meadows. The 36-year-old Bobo was gone the next morning when another friend came to pick him up for the opening day of hunting season. It was very odd, for Bobo had no transportation of his own. All of Bobo's belongings were located at his campsite. The 36-year-old Bobo, a part-time woodcutter, had been living alone at the Woodruff Meadows for weeks. Bobo had left everything behind that included his black hat, 2 rifles, and all of his clothes. The 36-year-old Robert Bobo has not been heard or seen since October 2nd, 1998. Bobo knew the area too well to get lost, and he had no money to leave on his own. Search teams covered the area more than a half a dozen times. Police found no evidence of the whereabouts of 36-year-old Robert Bobo. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of Robert Bobo from Prospect, Oregon. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Jackson County Sheriff's Office investigator Alan Foster at 541-774-6800.
Case 8. Welcome to Salem, Oregon. Missing female. It was on July 4th, 1982, when 18-year-old Sherry Melissa Irely, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Salem, Oregon. On that date, Irely was called into work at her part-time job, delivering pizzas for Domino's Pizza. Around 10:30 p.m., the 18-year-old Irely was sent to deliver 3 large pizzas to a remote location on River Haven Drive near Minto Brown Island Park late at night. A nearby resident came across the delivery car about 1/2 hour later. The driver's door was open, the engine was running, the headlights were on, and the emergency brakes set. Pizzas lay on the ground near the car, and Irely was gone. The neighbor called the police, who later determined that the delivery address did not exist. The caller had given a fictitious name, and the call had been placed from the Salem Motel. Investigators say the crime appeared to be carefully planned, ruling out simple rape and robbery. 18-year-old Irely was likely flagged down by someone she knew. Irely felt comfortable enough to set the parking brake and open the door. There were no signs of a struggle. Extensive searches of the area failed to turn up anything. The 18-year-old Irely has not been seen or heard from since. On December 17, 2007, convicted serial killer William Scott Smith, serving 2 life sentences, pleaded guilty to the murder of 18-year-old Sherry Melissa Irely. Smith, the killer, claimed Irely died during a botched kidnap attempt. Serial killer William Scott Smith told police after kidnapping the young woman, Smith strangled his victim to death. Scott claims it took place in a secluded spot along the Little Pudding River. Scott claims he left the 18-year-old Sherry Melissa Irely's body in the river. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 18-year-old Sherry Melissa Irely from Salem, Oregon. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Marion County Sheriff's Office, Detective Mike Myers, at 503-540-8096.
Welcome to Oklahoma. The Doe Network has 28 males and 52 females listed as being missing from the state of Oklahoma. Case 9. Welcome to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Missing male. It was on December 13, 2004 is when 26-year-old Stephen Mitchell Adams, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. It was a Monday on that date, and Stephen Mitchell Adams completed a final examination at the Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. The 26-year-old Adams was last seen at a store in the Keys Cookson area of Cherokee County, just south of Tahlequah. Around that time, Adams' girlfriend phoned him to ask how the final went, and Adams advised her it went well. That's when the 26-year-old Adams told his girlfriend that he was giving a man a ride to Keys, Oklahoma, and that he would call her right back. That call never came, and Adams' visit to his mother in Webbers Falls, Oklahoma, never happened. Since December 13, 2004, the 26-year-old Adams has missed work and other final examinations. Adams has had no contact with his family or friends. Stephen Adams' absence is considered very suspicious. Also missing is Adams' vehicle, a white 1995 Chevrolet Sierra GMC short bed pickup truck with a red pinstripe down the side with Oklahoma plates. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 26-year-old Stephen Mitchell Adams from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Tahlequah Police Department, Detective Dale Glory, at 918-456-8801, or the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Vicki Lyons at 1-800-522-8017.
Case 10. Welcome to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Missing female. It was on April 13th, 1986, when 19-year-old Pamela Dawn Tinsley, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. On that day, the 19-year-old Tinsley was last seen at Lake Overholser, where she had gone with friends to relax. Tinsley had driven her Volkswagen pickup to an area on the west side of Lake Overholser known as the Flats. The area was a popular drinking spot and hangout for young people. The 19-year-old Tinsley was reported missing after friends said she failed to return from a motorcycle ride as a passenger with an unidentified white man she met at the lake. The unidentified white man was no taller than 6 feet and weighed 180 to 200 pounds. He had brown hair and maybe a brown mustache, and he seemed to be between 25 and 30 years old. It was about 2 p.m. when Tinsley was last reported being seen after she left her purse with a girlfriend and said she was going to take a ride around the lake on the motorcycle. After April 13th, 1986, 19-year-old Tinsley's credit cards and bank accounts were never accessed. Tinsley didn't have her Volkswagen or her clothes. At the time, Tinsley was working for a newspaper. 19-year-old Tinsley had at least 3 people staying with her in a one-bedroom apartment. They did not rent, and Tinsley was planning to. They did not pay rent, and Tinsley was planning to ask them to leave. I believe it was also a response that a couple of weeks before Tinsley's disappearance, police had found marijuana in Tinsley's home. Tinsley knew that the marijuana didn't belong to her. 19-year-old Tinsley was engaged to a military man serving out of state. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 19-year-old Pamela Dawn Tinsley from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Oklahoma City Police Department, Detective Mike Burke, at 405-297-1000.
Welcome to North Carolina. The Doe Network has 69 males and 68 females listed as being missing from the state of North Carolina. Case 11. Welcome to Fayetteville, North Carolina. Missing male. It was on October 3rd, 1982, is when 42-year-old James Edward Lewis, a white male, went missing and vanished without a trace from Fayetteville, North Carolina. On that day, the 42-year-old Lewis left his home in a white Ford Fiesta. Lewis told his family that he was going to Vero Beach, Florida, to interview for a job flying Piper airplanes from the dealer to buyers. The 42-year-old Lewis was recently a retired major with 25 years in the U.S. Army. Lewis is a founding member of the Golden Knights U.S. Army Parachute Team, a highly decorated and wounded Vietnam veteran. Lewis is a skilled pilot with a commercial and seaplane ratings. It was his habit on trips away from home to stay in phone contact with his wife. However, after his October 3rd, 1982 departure, Lewis did not call home. In January 1983, Mrs. Lewis received a call from a parking lot attendant at the Fayetteville Municipal Airport. The attendant informed her that the Ford Fiesta had been parking in a long-term lot since October 6, 1982, and the fees were stacking up. The family reported the discovery of the vehicle to the Fayetteville police, but the car was repossessed by the finance company before authorities investigated. In 1992, the family had James Lewis declared legally dead. The location of 42-year-old James Edward Lewis is still unknown. Foul play is suspecting the disappearance of 42-year-old James Edward Lewis from Fayetteville, North Carolina. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department at 910-323-1500.
Case 12. Welcome to Charlotte, North Carolina. Missing female. It was on July 31st, 1975, when 21-year-old Denise Newsom Porch, a white female, disappeared and vanished without a trace from Charlotte, North Carolina. On that day, the 21-year-old Porch disappeared from her job as manager of the Yorktown Apartments in Charlotte, North Carolina. Porch was married to a man that she had dated since they were in their teens. The young married couple lived in the Yorktown Apartments. The 21-year-old Porch worked as a resident manager there, showing available units during the day. Porch was last seen showing a man around the Yorktown Apartments. There were no signs of a struggle in Porch's apartment, but the television was on and the air conditioning left running. Porch's purse lay on a table, and her Camaro was parked outside. The only thing missing from her home were the keys to the vacant apartment and a log of available units that she showed to gain tenants. When her husband came home from work around 8 p.m., his wife's usual note hung on the door stating she had left to show an apartment. It is believed that 21-year-old Denise Newsom Porch was abducted at gunpoint or knife point during the day. Police mounted a widely publicized search for Porch. Eventually, the leads trailed off. The suspect, Larry Bell, was a former electrician who lived very near Porch. The same man was later convicted of killing 2 South Carolina women. The suspect never confessed to the 21-year-old Porch's abduction. The suspect was executed in South Carolina's electric chair. On September 16, 1982, the 21-year-old Porch was declared legally dead. Foul play is suspected in the disappearance of 21-year-old Denise Newsom Porch from Charlotte, North Carolina. If you have any info concerning this case, please call Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, Detective J.L. Tuttle, at 704-336-2311.
Okay, Olivia, is there anything you would like to add to any of these cases?
2 of them. that one where the little girl told, I guess it was her grandmother, that Daddy killed her mother.
Yeah. Yes.
And then there was a lack of evidence. I don't understand that. Isn't that is it just because she's minor that they didn't take that as a viable?
Usually in a lot of states, now I don't know why this is, but in a lot of states, for a child to testify, the age requirement is usually around 5 years of age. Okay, how they determine this, I don't have a clue. Okay, if you have a child that can speak, it doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter how old they are. If they're able to speak and tell you what happened, yes, they should be considered a witness. And so when you take that into account, even if the child was 5 years old, more than likely the testimony would be on camera in a separate room from the courtroom.
Right.
That's usually the way it is, so the child won't feel uncomfortable having all these people around and so on and so on. And,
right.
But yeah, there's a lot of states, if you look around, yeah, for some reason 5 and up is, they consider that an impeccable witness for whatever reason, so.
Yeah. Okay. And on the Tinsley case, I think her roommates that she was going to get rid of, I think they were the ones that caused her harm. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, they, like I said, that was one of the first things thought of, because, and see, that's another thing. It doesn't explain in the records why the police was even at the residence to find the marijuana. So see, that makes me think maybe there was a domestic a domestic issue where she had to call the police, and when the police arrived, that's what they found, or whatever. There's just no record of how they was in her home to begin with. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All righty.
I want to thank Olivia for being on the show tonight. And I want to give a special thanks to our viewers and listeners for tuning in, for you all have been so kind. I have a quote for you all. If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. Bruce Lee. Always remember, folks, that if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. That's the end of our Mja Podcast, this series, Deep Into the Woods. This has been episode 16, part 8, 12 Missing Person Cold Cases. We say to all of you, good night from Morrisonville, New York.
All my friends are heathen, take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. Welcome to the rooms of people who have rules for people that they love one day docked away. Just because you check the guns at the door doesn't mean our brains will change from hand to grenade. You'll never know a psychopath sitting next to you. You'll never know a murderer sitting next to you. You'll think how we get here sitting next to you. But after all I've said, please don't forget. All my friends are heathen, take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. We don't deal with outsiders very well. They say newcomers have results now. You've trust issue, not to mention